So anyone who thinks like poverty is intractable, all you have to do is point them to 3 years ago and say, we actually did.
I want to just slow down a second and underline what you were just talking about, because I think people need to know about this. There was a program that briefly came and went during COVID, so it didn't get any press. And it was a tax credit for poor working families for their children.
Yeah.
And this proved that a government tax cut such as this could essentially eradicate poverty. It came and went. No one really knew about it. Tell us a little bit more about this program.
Yeah, it's the Enhanced Child Tax Credit. It was passed during COVID and during the year 2021.
Bipartisan?
Yeah, those bills were bipartisan. And it sent, let's call it, a few $100 per child to working poor families. So if you had a couple of kids, maybe you were getting, $400 a month to pay for their food and books and fuel and things like that. And it cut child poverty in the United States from 11% to 5.5%. It lifted about 3 million American
in 1
kids
year
out of poverty within that year. Like, and the effects were, by the way, immediate.
Yeah.
And economists then tried to track down what happened with these families and the money. And they found it went to literally food, fuel, books, like
Childcare.
the most benign like expenses you can imagine. And that you saw an immediate improvement in ability to learn, a lower incidence of domestic violence, a lower incidence of abuse, like pretty much anything you can imagine you were hoping for, you got. 120 economists, including a few Nobel Prize winners, signed a letter at the end of the year saying this is the best thing we've done in a generation. We should keep doing it. And unfortunately, you can imagine how the story ends. We did undo it in 22 because it fell victim to party politics, but this is something, DC does some pretty dumb things, but what they did was they said, we're going to make this happen for a year, and there's no way we could ever undo it. So then like the future versions of us will then have no choice but to extend it. But then they did not extend it, and child poverty went from 5.5% back up to 11%.
Just like that in 1 year.
Now
it's an expensive program. We're talking about, billions of dollars a year, right?
Yeah, it's about $160 billion a year.
But the benefit is
fewer poor kids, which means better educational outcomes, better health outcomes, probably fewer truants, fewer people running afoul of our criminal justice system, higher levels of employment.
And in that sense, a high tide raises all boats. If you have lifted these kids out of poverty, if you're just talking from a right-wing, left-wing perspective, from the more conservative element, you might say, well, then you're raising up a whole nother element to the middle class that is going to be able to be taxed more, that's going to bring more money into the economy, and we're going to gain that money back. That investment to bring kids out of poverty is absolutely going to be paid back.
Oh, yeah. You can very clearly see that you'd get your money back and then some. If someone does wind up in jail or something like that, it's incredibly expensive. If someone winds up in our healthcare system, incredibly expensive. And to your point, Rainn, there are a lot of middle-of-the-road Republicans who love this because it's good for families. By the way, it's also wildly popular. Like when they went out into their districts and their constituents would say, hey,
what happened to that money that I was getting sent for 1 year?
Yes. And that breaks my heart. I have spent millions of dollars in DC trying to lobby for a revival of the enhanced child tax credit because it's such a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to say I do see there's hope, but we shouldn't be in this position. I mean, you do something good, everyone says it's a good thing, and then you undo it. And now you have families that have been struggling since 22, and they don't get that time back. Even if we do successfully end up bringing it back in 2025, I mean, it shouldn't be like this.
Hey, did you like that video? Why don't you click on this one? Or maybe watch this one? Or click over here.